Welcome to the Suited Up for Impact Telesummit 2018. I'm your host, Miss Nina B. Abdul-Wakeel. So let me just give you a introduction now. Let me see if I say your full name correctly.
Nope.
Montano?
Montonio, just like Antonio, but Montonio.
Oh, Montonio Weatherall, but he's affectionately called Pastor Monty. Is a relationship coach and author, and I have his book right here, right next to me,
Awesome.
my personally autographed copy. And he believes that evidence of the manifested healing in all believers is shown when each person walks in their gift. Pastor Montaner often says, when we were born, we all received a life sentence. His life sentence is he exists to help people become the best version of themselves. He is grateful that God raised him up from the ashes in order to carry out his purpose for this generation. Pastor Monty loves preaching and teaching, is also the host of a very popular weekly Facebook live show called Relationship Monday. He absolutely loves spending time with his daughter Morgan and the love of his life, First Lady Kimberly. And his church just recently got rebranded, renamed the Love Church, and I love the logo. I think I sent you a message about that. But tonight, Pastor Monty is going to talk about being your best self by dealing with the pain of your past. Welcome to the Telesummit, Pastor Monty.
Queen Nina, I'm so glad that I get a chance to be a part of this wonderful telesummit. I've been listening to these kings, and I'm like, wow. They have just been absolutely amazing in what they have been saying tonight. And it's an absolute honor to bring up the rear of this 2-day telesummit. And I pray that what I say can add value to somebody's life tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. So give the people what they want to know. I mentioned earlier about there's a lot of people who are walking around carrying the pain of their past, and it is hindering them from really walking in their purpose. So what would you say to the people about that?
Well, the first thing I would love to do is I would love to tell you a little bit about my story. I believe that to understand how I have how why I've been authorized to speak on this is because of what I've gone through. From the ages of 4 to 7 years old, I was sexually abused by 2 male relatives. And actually, I went to the second male relative telling on the first one because the first male relative said to me that if I told anyone of my parents that he would kill them, he would kill me. So at 4 or 5 years old, you instinctively know you ought to tell somebody. So I went to another male relative and told him, and then he started doing to me even worse than what the first did. And
Mm.
so I spent my entire teenage life, young male life, young adult life, late adult life, absolutely hating myself. Now, you have to realize that God has downloaded so much potential in me. There's a lot of host of things that I can do. People would come up and see me and say, "Man, you're magnanimous. You're just like people are drawn to you." I didn't believe any of that. I spent my entire adult life just being in my way. I was my own worst enemy. Self-hatred was the order of the day for me. And when I begin to trace this all the way back, it came back to that incident or those incidents that happened to me over a period of 3 years, being sexually assaulted by these 2 male relatives. And that really just steered the course of my life. And a seminal moment happened to me about 30, I'm going to say about 30 now, 4 months ago. I had called my wife home. Now, I'm a pastor of a church. It's in the upper 2 percentile of churches in the nation, so we do pretty well. Financially, I do pretty well. All of this is, you would look on the outside and say, man, why would this man be suicidal? But I called my wife home on a Friday and I said, honey, when you come home from work, I want to speak with you. And the reason why I want to talk with you is because I want to let you know that I'm going to end my life this weekend. Now, I know most times when people talk about suicide, right, they talk about it in terms of, people say, well, you don't talk about suicide, you just do it. The only reason why I didn't just do it is because my wife is the best person I've ever met on the planet Earth. She is so giving, she's so kind. I did not want her to come home from work without any explanation whatsoever to find my lifeless body, without why, what happened, everything on the outside. I didn't have a clue. And so I just wanted to explain to her, and she was aware of the childish sexual abuse and all of that, but I wanted to explain to her why I was tired of living. And she was trying to talk me down. I didn't want to be talked down, but my wife is a praying woman, and she literally prayed me through that entire weekend. I missed church. I had an associate pastor preach for me. But it was in that moment that I made a decision, when this whole spirit of suicide broke, that I was going to never scare her again like that, because this was real. This wasn't an attention-getting thing. This was real for me and for her. And since I wasn't going to take her through that again, I was going to do everything I can to get healthy. And the first thing I did is I went to see a professional counselor. This is something that, especially in the African-American church, especially, we don't talk about it. You know, Jesus paid it all, Jesus fixed it. But we don't look at the scripture in Isaiah 1, and I'm not going to bask in too many scriptures, but just says, come, let us reason together. And I think sometimes it's really great to have a third party, the person there. This wasn't a pastor, because we're all great pastors, but I needed to see a therapist to help me dig through what was going on. He happened to be a Christian. He used to be a pastor, but God had called him to the field of counseling. And so we were able to wade through all of these things. And I began to understand that the reason why none of my dreams were being fulfilled, the reason why I was starting and stopping and starting and stopping and quitting things, and I couldn't finish it. You know, I'm so blessed, Nina, that you have that book in your hand, and it looks really good in your hands, right? But I had wrote another book, but at the same time, I got halfway through it and I would stop. I would never commit to anything. And it was because I was my worst enemy. Now, I know it'd be so easy to blame what happened with those two male relatives did to me. They started a chain reaction, but I could not get out of my own way until I resolved that and began to work my way all the way back up. And once I did that, you know, God is just, from that point on, things begin to roll from there. And so I'm here tonight to really talk to people, let them know that you can't move on to your present, and certainly not to your future, if you don't deal with your past and heal from that trauma.
So you mentioned something that I totally agree in the African American community, particularly seeking counseling. And then what would you say was the next part of your journey for healing?
The thing, I did three things, and this is what I really want to kind of talk about tonight, is once I sought counseling, and of course I had to do the work. So I just wasn't sitting down talking to a wonderful therapist, but then I had to get out and do some of the work. The first thing I did once that process began is I made a decision. This is the thing I want to share with the viewers tonight. You've got to make a decision to be whole. You know, so many times, my issue sometimes with Christians, I love the Lord, I'm a pastor, right? But my issue sometimes with Christian is we don't understand that faith without works is dead. That we can have all this wonderful faith in God, but you're going to have to do the works of faith as well. You're going to have to make a decision that I'm going to do whatever's necessary to be whole. So counseling was a part of it. Another piece of it was looking back at my life, realizing I've got to stop all the behaviors that I would do in the past that stopped me from being my best self. Let me give you an example. If you go to my Facebook page today, right, I wrote this morning. So I woke up in a funk. You know, something was going on. I see now that it was an attack, because I was going to be on here with Brother Barron and Brother Craig, and we were going to be helping people. And so it was an attack, right? But I woke up in a funk, and I didn't feel like doing anything. I didn't want to go anywhere. But once I made a decision to be whole, one of the things I said, I will never quit another thing another day of my life. If I start it, I'm going to finish it. And I started these routines about 2 years ago. I decided that every morning I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have a time with God in prayer and His Word. I'm going to read a chapter from a book that I'm reading. I read one book a month. because I believe that part of being your best self is you can't stop learning. From there, I go to the gym. So I have this routine. You guys got to understand, this morning, I didn't want to hear about no routine. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to do nothing. But I made a decision to be committed because most people aren't committed. And I said, every single day, I'm going to do what I do. I went to the gym, and lo and behold, some miraculous things happened there. Somebody came up to me and just blessed me, said, you've been impactful in my life. But it starts with making a decision that come hell or high water, I'm going to live my best life. That's where it starts. You've got to make a decision. The second thing that I would also say is that I did and the name of my book is Take My Life Back. And that's part of what I want to talk about here about being your best self is I made a decision to forgive who I needed to forgive. There's so many folks that are walking around today, especially men, because we've been taught since the Tonka truck days, you keep it inside. Crying is weakness. You don't talk about it. And the danger with bottling all of that up inside is it stays there and you never deal with it. And if you don't deal with it, you don't begin to forgive the people that wounded you. You know, I went to a juvenile detention center last Christmas of 2016 going into 17. And there were, we were supposed to talk to 15 boys and they only let like 6 or 8 for behavior problems or whatever. And so all the people were standing up in this forum and they were talking to the boys and telling the boys, their story. And the Lord told me to do something different. Hear the boy's story. And so I said, I can spend the next 30 minutes, I told them, or whatever, I had 30 minutes. I can spend the next 30 minutes telling you what you should or shouldn't do, but I want to hear your story. And what I noticed happened in that moment, Nina, was that the guards were crying. And the guards were crying because for the first time, they didn't see inmates. Mm. They saw human beings. Mm-hmm. And I told them, I said, I want to know your story. I don't want to know how you got to the position where you were arrested. Your mind was arrested a long time ago. And that's why we're here. Tell me your story. And once I begin to hear their story, these boys' story, I begin to show the guards and the people that allowed us to come and minister that day that everybody has a story and we got to go back to the story. I have found so many times that when I'm counseling people or coaching people, I always see that inner child that walks in the room. When I go talk to a man in my office or a couple, I'm looking for little Monty. I'm looking for, if I was counseling Craig, I'm looking for little Craig. I'm looking for little Baron. Because that's, when I find that age, that's at the point where we know where they were hurting at. And oftentimes, at the back of that hurt and that issue is an issue with forgiveness. And forgiveness is a difficult thing. But I think it's one that we need to do. For one thing, I say about forgiveness, you ought to forgive because you're the main prisoner. When someone hurts you, there are 2 people put in prison that day, you and the person that wounded you. But that person that wounded you is the common prisoner. You are the main prisoner. You're not forgiving people for them. Somebody just texted me, as I'm preparing for this telesummit, somebody texted me last night, Pastor, do you need an apology to forgive? They said God doesn't forgive until we ask for forgiveness. I said, well, technically, I hear what you're saying, but that's not true. Actually, God forgave us before the foundation of the world. We have to receive forgiveness when we ask for forgiveness, right? Don't want to get theological, but this is what I told him. I said, we have to come to God and ask for forgiveness because God is perfect. The forgiveness is for us. It's not for him, right? But whether a person who wounded you asks for forgiveness or not, you have to forgive them because forgiveness is mainly for you. Because a lot of times what I teach people is the people that wounded you, oftentimes, how many times somebody has hurt us and the sad truth is they're not even thinking about us. Mm-hmm. They've gone on with their life. They're doing their thing. We're still trapped in that moment. It's amazing to me. My daughter came to me because my first marriage ended in divorce. And Brother Barron, I had to put on one of those ties, man, one of those hard conversations when your baby girl comes and she says, Dad, we need to talk about what happened with, me, you, and Mommy when you were in the house. And one of the things she talked about an incident that happened when she was 10 years old. I didn't even remember the incident. And it occurred to me with forgiveness a lot of times is that the person that, a lot of times people wound us, they don't even remember the incident. We're still trapped in that day. And so we have to forgive because we're the main prisoner. And that's something that, you know, I spent so many years in that prison. If this hadn't happened to me, if they hadn't did this to me, I would have had a better life. I made so many excuses, which affected my career and everything. And I had to make a decision to release it. And until you release that and forgive them, you're still going to be held to the pain of your past.
You know I'm taking notes, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So what I have is, you know, seeking help, getting counseling, and getting help someone. I too had to deal with some pains in my past, and one of the styles that the counselor that used with me is like she took like a treasure chest, and she said we're just gonna throw everything in the treasure chest, whatever your hurts, your feelings, and we'll one by one just take something out and talk about what it is and deal with it so that you can just put it into perspective. Because sometimes our experiences happen, particularly in childhood. Now we're an adult and we're able to look at the situation from a different perspective as an adult, and it helps us bring closure. And then I love the comment about stopping those behaviors that we have, you know, found ourselves getting into because we weren't loving ourselves enough to move forward, right? And you talked about making a decision to forgive. I think I was on a forgiveness summit, and that was one of the things that I talked about is the forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for you to release you to move on because you're the prisoner. Like you said, you're holding yourself back from living your best life by holding on to that negativity. So anything else that you think would be valuable to the people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, so once you go back and you realize that this painful past that I have has affected me, you've got to absolutely understand to the degree that it has affected you. I think the number one thing that it did is that those of us who have a traumatic past, it rewired our thinking, and we developed a pattern of negative thinking. We developed a pattern of destructive thinking, all the way down to the core. The Word of God says this: guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. When you study that in other translation, it makes it more plain. And this is what I want the viewers to hear. Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. And that's what that scripture is saying. And what has happened in our life is that once these triggering incidents happen, it just really rewired how we think and how we flow. And now all the way down to the subconscious mind. Now here's the dangerous part about destructive thought patterns. You become that, right? So you have this abuse that takes place, and it creates these dangerous thought patterns. I can't tell you how many times I said to myself, I'm nothing. I can't tell you how many times I thought about, until that day 30 months ago, I thought about suicide every single day for 3 years. I'm talking about after preaching sermons where you got 75% of the people on their feet, you got people congratulating me, thanking you for that word, I would get in my car and absolutely want to die. And one thing I had to realize is I had to go back and rewire, because you can think so negatively for so long, and this is the message I want you to hear. You can think so negatively for so long, you think that's normal. You think these voices in your head that's telling you can't, to give up, these voices in your head that's saying, you know, you're worthless. It becomes normal because it's almost like a dead body just following you around in your mind. It's not normal. You have to rewire your thinking. You know, I got so excited, Nina, when I saw this titled Suited for Impact. Because I love how all of us, Craig, Barron, myself, we're dressed nice, we look good. I want people suited for impact on the inside. Because what people don't really realize is this suit, this skin, these bones, that's not the real us anyway. The real us is our spirit. We are spiritual beings living in an earthly body. And until your soul, which is your mind, will, and emotions, are whole, you're never going to manifest on the outside. A lot of us walk around dressed to the nines, but on the inside, we're dying. I want people suited up on the inside and healthy on the inside. And that's the only way we're going to make an impact on the outside.
Pastor Monty, I just want to insert and read you one of the comments in the chat box. Um, it says, I understand what all of you said, and the advice will help in my whole life. So when this happens to me, I can express myself to my brother and my mother.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm a little choked up because that message is from my youngest son.
Mm.
And if no one else on this telesummit is getting something, to know that my youngest son is listening and hearing and understanding and gaining value from what you guys are saying, it's totally worth all that I have done to get us here. So I just wanted to share that. I wanted to let you know that, and to thank you for that.
I just want to say, to your wonderful young king, to everyone else that's on, you are an amazing person. I don't care about the mistakes you've made. I don't care how the evil one has infiltrated your mind, rewired your thinking. I'm here to tell you tonight, from someone whose mentality, whose emotions was in the gutter. I've been born again since I was 15. I was saved, but I wasn't whole. I want you to know you are an absolute amazing person. That's why the enemy has been attacking you for so long, because he doesn't want you to realize just how awesome you are. And I would say to you that you're so amazing that when God created you, he created you in his image and his likeness. You see why the devil's been after you. I want you to make a commitment tonight to do whatever you have to do to get out of your own way. Because I'm going to tell you something. Nobody can stop you but you. No one can stop you but you. I wasn't just sexually abused. That's just a part of the story that I choose to tell. I was physically abused. I was called Mr. Mother Effer for the first 8 years, 9, 10 years of my life. I was emotionally abused, physically abused, sexually abused, verbally abused. But the day I realized who I was in Christ and I was going to take my life back and walk in wholeness. As I told you, that don't mean every day is perfect. I woke up with an attack today, but I put some steps in place to continue to renew my mind to who I am. I'm not trying to sell y'all wolf tickets or sound religious. Once you understand that as a man or a woman thinks in his or her heart, so are they. Improve your thought life. Realize who you are in God. And I promise you, when you rewire this and understand who you were created to be, brother, sister, you're going to be absolutely unstoppable. The only thing I want to do with the rest of my life now, whether I'm preaching in a pulpit, whether I'm on a college campus, whether I'm in a jail forum in prison, is to let men and women know who they really are, because that's really been the trick from the beginning, to rob us of our identity. You realize that, your life changes forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow. I mm, thank you so much. Any last words? I mean, those were powerful last words right there. I mean, I just am in awe of what God has done with this telesummit and the words that have come forth tonight from each one of the speakers. So I just want to give you an opportunity to share anything else you want to share with the telesummit, and also let people know how they can follow you or support you in what you're doing.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you can follow me on Facebook at montyweatherall.me. I'm sorry, that's my website. You can follow me on Facebook at Monty Weatherall. That's Monty. Weather, like most of us, cold weather outside. ALL. You can follow me at Monty Weatherall on Instagram, Twitter, everything. I mostly do a lot of my social media work on Facebook. As you said, I got this wonderful book out. You know, if I could just say something about this, this is just not my story. What I'm doing is I'm giving you 7 steps. This is just not a workbook. I really put 50,000 words in here to give you 7 steps to take your life back as well. You can pick up my book at montyweatherall.me. I exist to help people become their best self. And I would love to coach. I would love to train. As you said, you can get on my Relationship Monday for free every Monday. And we just help you become the best person. I'm really committed to that.
Thank you. Thank you.